It's Monday, and I'd like to welcome you back to the last episode of the Joust About Careers podcast for the 2022-2023 school year. This is the place to learn about careers from people who are actually in the trenches every day, and I'm your host, Brian Brott, and I want to see all people make good career and life decisions. My guest today is Lacey Simon, a licensed practical nurse at Blanchard Valley Medical Associates. Lacey shares about how a typical day for her looks, the various levels of nursing, including LPN and RN, how she spent 9.5 years working at Whirlpool before deciding to go back to school to become a nurse, what college life was like as a non-traditional student, and much more. Whether you're interested in a career in healthcare or are still exploring your options, I hope that what Lacey shares today will help all of you make better career decisions. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Joust About Careers podcast, and this is actually our last one of the 2023 school year, so you'll have to wait until next September to see the next episode. But today we have with us 2009 Van Buren graduate Lacey Simon, who is a LPN at Blanchard Valley Medical Associates in Findlay. She's going to be talking a little bit about her career as a nurse. And I'm also really excited to hear about her story of how she ended up as a nurse, because she did not immediately head down that path after high school. So Lacey, thank you very much for joining us today to talk about your career. And to get started, I'd like to just hear a little bit about what your current day-to-day life is like as a nurse at Blanchard Valley Medical Associates.
All right. Well, I actually work with a bunch of different types. I'm actually a float, so I work all over Blanchard Valley Medical Associates. I work for family medicine. I work for cardiac, dermatologists, pulmonary, podiatrists. So when I get into work, I room them. I room their patients. And I go through like all of their medical stuff, like why they're there. And I pretty much set everything up for when the doctor comes in to see them.
And so as an LPN, you were saying that, you're working toward becoming an RN. What are the differences between those levels of nursing? Are there other levels in addition to LPN and RN? If you could talk about that a little bit.
I feel like when you first start out, so like there are CNAs and STNAs, which a lot of people, they work in like nursing homes mostly. And then it can go up to an LPN, which is a licensed practical nurse. And then the next step ahead would be a registered nurse, which is an RN. And then if you go further, you become, oh man, now I can't, definitely just forgot that. A physician's assistant pretty much, which is it just like they work like right under a doctor. Okay. So the transition program is like an LPN can do pretty much almost anything an RN can, but they can't like pass certain meds. So like when we have IVs, like I can't start a medication through an IV, but I can keep a medication going. And an LPN, I feel like works more towards patient care, as an RN works more like what needs to happen in the future, if that makes sense.
Okay. So what are the steps that you're taking to become an RN? You talked about that transition plan. How does that look for you going forward?
So certain schools offer transition programs. And so like when you go for your RN, it's about a 4-year. And then when you do LPN, it's about a year to 2 years. And so the first 2 years of your RN is pretty much what I do. So when I would go back in for my RN, I'd only have 2 more years of schooling and a couple more prereqs to do. And so once you get accepted in the program, you probably have about like a year, maybe a year and a half to 2 years of more schooling.
So schooling never stops, it seems.
Definitely not.
So when you were in high school, what were your plans when you left high school, and then what did you do when you left high school?
Well, my plans, I really wanted to go in the military, actually. I always really wanted to be a nurse, but in high school, it was always military. I mean, they paid for everything. You got to see the world. You got to travel. And I just ended up not doing that. And, I took some probably a couple years. And then I did go back to college for about 8 months. And then I dropped out, because I wanted to have fun, and ended up having to get a job, obviously, because I became an adult. And
Yeah.
I started at Whirlpool, and I was at Whirlpool for about 9.5 years here in Findlay.
So what did you do there? And I know you had said you enjoyed that time. What was that like? And what else can you tell us about that?
So they make dishwashers. Um, it was pretty nice because both my parents worked there, so I knew it was good money. Like, that's what provided me my life as I grew up. So, um, it was really good. I mean, like they had I was what do I say, like labor pool there. So like I learned all the jobs all over the factory, which was cool. Um, and but it was very repetitive, and that was really the only thing I didn't like. I love the people I worked with. It's not that I didn't like the jobs, but there are jobs that you don't like there, so I mean you get stuck on things, and I think the factory life just became a little too repetitive for me. And I'm a very people person, and I like to care for people, so when it came down to it, I just knew that wasn't the job that I wanted to be at for the rest of my life.
That's the nice thing too, that I think so often students think, well, I'm going to be stuck doing the same thing. Whatever I choose to do straight out of high school, that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And
Mhm.
that's not always the case.
Not at all.
So when you decided to become a nurse,
Mhm.
what was your first step in that process? Where did you go to get your schooling? How did that work?
All right. I mean, so obviously, since I was a little bit older, it was definitely me paying for all of my schooling. So, I didn't have the option for my parents to help me pay or anything like that because, I was mid 20s, later 20s when I started. So I kind of explored the schools around to see like, best pricing, what was close to me. Um, the first thing obviously I looked at in Findlay area was Owens, but their nursing program was actually out of Toledo. So I looked around, and Lima had a really good nursing program. It's Rhodes State College, which that's where I did end up going. Um, Plus they have the transition program. I think Owens does have it now, but before when I first started looking, they did not. Like I said, LPN program is about a 2-year program. It just depends on how much prereqs you have. Now, for me, it took me probably about 4 years, 4.5 years, because I was paying out of pocket. So I started taking my prereqs first while I was working. So, I would work a full 8-hour shift to get off work, study, and go to school. And so I take a couple classes at a time. And then once I hit my actual, like where I had to get into my clinicals with my nursing classes, that's when I ended up quitting my job and going full time into my school.
Right. Now, is that something where during your clinicals, were you paid for that, or was
Nope.
that okay? So that was all
No.
coming out of your pocket.
Yep.
And yeah, so, I think that is something too that, like you said, a lot of times students straight out of high school, they might get some help from their parents, but in your
Mhm.
situation, it was all you,
Yeah.
and you had to make sure you had the money
Oh
to
yeah.
pay for it. And I think, again, that's a great way to avoid student loan debt, is to, you just pay
Oh,
for them as you
absolutely.
go, and that saves you from doing all of that. What was it like to be that non-traditional student? Were there many other people that weren't straight out of high school in your classes, or were most people those 18 and 19-year-olds?
I would say probably about 75% of them were very young, straight out of school. Um, my first semester of my LPN program, I was probably the second oldest person, and there was, I think, about 12 or 13 of us. But when I went into my second semester, we had a lot of people come in. Like, so those might have been people that had like either failed that certain semester, or if they failed out of the second year of an RN program, they could come into the LPN program and then do the transition program. So a lot of people opted to do that. So we grew to like about 40 people. And so when that happened, there was a lot more that were a little bit older that were either already getting ready to transition or, just trying to make their way up the chain. And it was kind of intimidating, honestly. But I may not look my age all the time, and my awesome personality makes me seem a little bit younger. So a lot of them thought I was in my early 20s or like, so I mean, that was kind of like my camouflage in at first. And they didn't know I was almost 30. So I mean, it was definitely difficult for sure because I didn't have everything they had. Like they were fresh out of school. So when, we went into classes, like they knew how to do things. And I mean, like, I remember being young and always making fun of my parents, like, oh, you can't work with computers and you can't do this on phones. And like, I mean, I'm very technology savvy. And no, I realized I was not when I got into school because I had to relearn how to use Excel, something I hadn't done in 10 years, and how to search certain things and find things. I mean, it was definitely a challenge, but honestly, with being with all the younger kids, like they helped so much. Like, I mean, once you make your friends and like your little like study cliques and stuff, like, I mean, they help you through everything and they really didn't judge. I didn't have a lot of the kids were floored by how old I was in the first place. So
Right, right. That's awesome that they didn't realize that you were
right.
that much older than them. So that's very cool. So what do you say, or what would you say you love the most about this career as a nurse?
I love helping people in general. I'm a healer at heart. So I knew this is something that I like medical field in general. I wanted to get into. I'm a fixer. So, I want to fix people all the time and like help them be the best that they can be. And becoming a nurse, you have a lot of bedside, um, which just typically means that like, you work with people all day long. You get to know people, your regulars that come in and um, you learn their stories and it's very interesting. It's just, I mean, it's beautiful, honestly. Like working with people every day is what I love to do. So
Any moments that really stick out that just really felt like you were in the right place? You were doing the right thing.
honestly, I feel like it's the little moments when people give you that gratification. I mean, I have some patients that come in and they specifically ask for me or specifically ask where I'm at so they can come say hi and you know just when you give a person like the relief that they need and like you can communicate with them and make them feel better just in like talking to them because I do work with a lot of older people, I would say, and sometimes they just want to talk to people because they're lonely. They've lost their spouses, their kids are grown and people aren't around. And I mean, just even giving them a conversation when they come in, like you can just tell like you made their whole day. And I love that about the job.
So as you think about the difficult parts,
Mhm.
what are those?
I mean, you have to realize everybody's different. And I would say the difficult parts is losing people too, because you do have people that come in and then all of a sudden you hear that they've passed or something has happened to them. Also, you get a lot of people that might not be very happy. So, taking them in there and they're not happy. I mean, it's hard not to take on other people's emotions, especially when they're telling you their stories and what's going on. So you can try to give them the best care that you can. And, some days can be amazing. And some days one patient can throw you off your game the whole day and you just have to act like it didn't. But you know what I mean? Like you take a lot home with you. It's definitely, you have to manage it for sure.
So you've obviously had a unique path to where you are today. Is there anything you would change about it, or do you feel like it needed to happen this way for you to be where you are right now?
I mean, I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, but I know everybody says it, adults, when you're in high school, everybody's like, go into college, get it done and over with, everything's rest. I've taken a year off or like a semester off, I mean, you want to like live and not go to school. I understand that, been there. But honestly, like do it while you're young because it is a little bit harder. I mean, I kind of have it easier because I don't have kids yet and, so I don't have to worry about that home life and stuff like that. Like, but I've watched people go to school and have 3 kids and work 8-hour shifts, and they still did it and they struggled so bad. And if you do it young and everything's still fresh, then you get to start your career sooner, something that you love, and even if you don't know what you want to do, like just starting to get your prereqs done and then like figuring out why you're there, like seeing opportunities that are available for you. I feel like being younger, definitely, I would have done that.
Okay.
I would have started way younger.
Right. Well, and again, you have the experience to be able to speak to that. So as you look back at yourself when you were in high school and now all that you've seen and learned and done, what do you know now about life or careers that you wish you had known when you were back in high school?
I feel like I'm like, that's a good question. I feel like there was a lot of more opportunities that I didn't know about in high school. Like I know we had like job fairs and like we were supposed to like, do projects on it and stuff. But I mean, there was so many more jobs that like being out in the world that I found out about. And I think that like doing that research or like, I remember we had a shadow for you in a class, we had a shadow job. And like, I feel like doing something either around something you're interested in will help you learn a lot more too. And what a lot of kids don't understand is like, I can go shadow anywhere. I mean, even before I had my nursing degree, like I could talk to the hospital and shadow a nurse to see if that's something I wanted to go into. And I don't think a lot of people think that that's an opportunity to do. So definitely research everything and just figure it out. I mean, like there's so many, like, I mean, even welding, like there's so many different opportunities out there. And I don't want people just to focus on one, like, I wanted to be a nurse and I wanted to do all these things, but learning so much more throughout life, like it did bring me back to my calling, but at least I had the opportunity to understand different opportunities in my life that I could have taken.
Do you remember where you shadowed when you were a sophomore?
Ooh. I shadowed a tattoo artist.
Okay.
I wanted something I thought that would be fun and something that was definitely out of my element, that I wanted to like see how like a day in that life would be, and definitely not something that I wanted to further in my career, but it was a cool experience though.
Well, they both work with needles, nurses
Right,
and tattoo
right.
artists. So there was a connection there. Well, Lacey, I really appreciate you sharing about your experience, and hope that as you continue down your path, whether that is to be an RN or whatever that is, I wish you good luck, and thank you very much for sharing all that you have about your life.
Well, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Joust About Careers podcast. I hope you learned valuable information from this career story, and to be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for watching, and as always, this is the place to go to learn just about careers.